Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro said he asked the country's Supreme Court to conduct an audit of the presidential election. Maduro was declared the winner despite opposition claims it has proof he actually lost by a wide margin. That has sparked widespread protests. The U.S.-based Carter Center deployed monitors to observe the election at Venezuela's request. It has concluded the vote was not democratic. And those protests have carried to several countries, including Canada. CBC's Evan Dyer is at a demonstration happening in Ottawa, and he joins us now. Evan, what's happening there?
Well, members of the local Venezuelan community, Diana, have come here to show their support for the opposition, for its leader, Maria Corina Machado, who was not allowed to run in this election, barred from running for office for 15 years by the Venezuelan government, and also the candidate who they were able to run for the opposition, Edmundo Gonzalez, who people here say was the clear winner of that election. There's also some non-Venezuelans here, and that shows some of the regional significance of this vote. There are people here from Cuba, people here from Nicaragua, allied governments of the Nicolás Maduro government in Venezuela, also undemocratic, and those are people who are hoping that there might be some kind of a chain reaction if the Venezuelan opposition is able to depose the Maduro government in Venezuela. They're hoping to see similar things happen in their own countries. There's a lot of optimism here, and that is because of the fact that you mentioned that unlike previous Venezuelan elections, in this case, the opposition has been able to grab electronic receipts. We understand from all or almost every electoral table in every polling station in Venezuela, and has been rapidly uploading them to the internet with photographic proof. The way that the Venezuelan voting system works, every voting machine issues a tile or an electronic receipt with a unique alphanumeric signature and QR code. So the vote numbers on those pieces of paper are verifiable. The opposition has them and has been loading them to the internet, and says that they show a margin of victory of more than 2-1 for Edmundo Gonzalez over Nicolás Maduro, with over 7 million votes for the opposition and under 3 million votes for the government. So there's definitely a mood here that things are going to go their way as other countries demand to see those results and withhold judgment, with very few countries other than extra, let's say, continental allies outside of the Americas, such as Russia, Iran, and China, recognizing Nicolás Maduro, and a few countries within the Americas, but mostly smaller countries like Cuba, Nicaragua, Honduras, and I believe Dominica, one or two other smaller countries, but generally not a lot of recognition so far for the Nicolás Maduro regime, and that's encouraging to the people here.
Tell me a little bit more about that, Evan. What has the overall, other than the countries you just named, what has the overall international reaction been to these elections, and what could the condemnation of Nicolás Maduro's regime and belief that he did not in fact win these elections from international powers, what effect could it have on the eventual outcome here?
Well, of course, you know, events will be decided within Venezuela itself, and foreign governments have limited influence, but it has to be concerning to the Maduro government that traditional allies, the larger countries in the region that have socialist governments such as Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico, and which have traditionally been very supportive of the Maduro government and the Chavez government before it, are not recognizing Nicolás Maduro as the winner of this election, and are instead demanding to see detailed vote counts by polling station and by table, rather than just the disaggregated overall number that the Venezuelan government has released, claiming to have won 51% of that total. So we've seen countries like Brazil's President Lula, Colombia's President Gustavo Petro, really making a very similar, or sounding a very similar tone to the United States and Canada. And that's a difference from 5 years ago. If you remember, in 2019, when Juan Guaidó was named interim president by Venezuela's opposition-dominated National Assembly, the United States recognized him immediately, and Canada followed very shortly after, second country in the world to do so. It invited the Venezuelan opposition to Ottawa. It helped to found the Lima Group, which was a group of countries focused on ousting Nicolás Maduro peacefully. Canada has had much more of an observer role this time, as have the United States. Neither one have recognized the opposition candidate. In fact, Peru is the only country to do that so far, we believe. But instead, what we're seeing is that around Latin America, there's much less acceptance for this election result than previous claims of victory by the Chavista or the Socialist Party alliance in Venezuela. And we're seeing those traditional allies turning their backs to some extent on this government. And that is a change in the dynamic which may not be decisive. As I say, of course, within Venezuela, the government of Venezuela still controls the military, it controls the police, and it controls the ministries and the centers of power. But internationally, we're seeing certainly a much more isolated Venezuelan regime than we would have seen a few years ago, and that's encouraging to the people here.
Evan, thank you so much for that. That's CBC's Evan Dyer in Ottawa.